Tough time.
Yeah.
When
He seems to like it. He goes about 3 weeks at a
crazy
time.
dog.
Well,
It is.
well, I like to,
She was in Memorial, she was in Memorial Hospital. I just smelled that twice. Yeah. Made her once, and I thought we did the ribbon cut.
I asked about a month ago.
okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get this information from you.
That's what they said. They like floated.
Then
I might get it to pull in sometime. I might pull it in and let them go there and have some and make sure everything's good. And we might do that too.
how's everything going?
Yep.
Pretty much.
I've been fighting video problems for the past week.
Treatment same way. I went up there. Reason it's going we're not over.
So,
Okay, see ya.
I want to welcome everyone to our Chamber of Commerce membership dinner. We're really glad to see a full house, and we're really happy to have Ms. Emily Yu with us to tell us about the ARP fund, and particularly the broadband grant program that's going on that stands a chance to have a huge impact in rural Tennessee. So we're really proud to have her with us today. As we get started, I want to introduce, we've got a few folks here, and I hope I don't miss anyone, but we've got Mr. Tommy Brown and Ms. Jennifer Gillum from Mid-Lowman Telephone Co-op. We've got Mr. Mike Birdwell and Michael Scott from Sequatchie Valley Connect, SVE Connect, I think. So they're serving fiber down in Marion County with Sequatchie Valley Electric. We've got Mr. Jonathan West, the manager of Twin Lakes Telephone Co-op in Middle Tennessee. Mr. John Bamber, ECD Director in Gray County. Mr. Rick Sharp, Gray County. Looking around, I don't know if I'm missing anyone. But I'm really glad you all are here with us today. So thank you for coming. As we get started, Mr. Evans, would you like to have the invocation to pledge, please?
Would you stand, please? Our Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this day that you've given us. We're thankful for the blessings of life, Lord, and we just pray for the ones that's got COVID. I pray that you'll be with them, and pray that they'll have a full recovery, Lord, and I pray, Lord, that you'll be with these families represented here, and we're thankful for having visitors from out of town. I pray that they enjoy this meeting tonight and come back to visit with us again often, Lord. Bless this food to the nourishment of our body and our bodies to thee, Lord, and thankful for the ones that prepared the food. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Feel free to help yourself. Wooden's Apple House has prepared a meal. It's already plated, and so feel free to help yourself. And after Miss Emily Yu, if you'll lead the way to dinner, and feel free to help yourself after Miss Emily.
I know, no one's coming up.
Of course, you don't feel
Thank you very much.
Yeah, she sent it to me, and I haven't signed it yet, but I'll sign it like as soon as I'm home. Her brother's using sometimes, but she's still cool.
We have two there. Carrie and Candace. Candace, she still works assessor's office. She's been there, I guess, going on 30 years.
Okay, you're in the county?
Here, Candace. She worked for me for years, and when I left, she stayed on. They keep her. She knows the job. They tried to get her to run for it, and she wouldn't do it. She just, no. I'll work in here, but I don't want to be the assessor.
What are some things you have
I tell Ben that, I said, keep trying to roll.
I need to take my little
But the only reason I played growing up is because I had to be carted around all of it. You know, I did, all I did is most of my job. They gave me and I didn't read it because I hated reading it. Do you like this? No, you won't. Not interested. So she had 2 years of this. 2 years. She's doing something. And then after that, then she goes to register. I think it's this year. And then she goes to. Like 2, 3.
Yeah. She just lives face to face. She's used to this.
They really start here. I think that's where it looks like they went
Red hook, it makes you real money.
It's been 8 hours.
Daycare's closed, so. They do. Yeah, yes, that's true. I will wear that. You're making me go crazy. Probably no, don't look at her, don't touch her.
She was sitting on One day we could get some, I think that was when I was my I've never had a dream that someone's traveling. So I was like, I've never heard of that. Been home for like 2 weeks.
They're her favorite.
So as we wrap up, I hope y'all enjoyed the dinner. And for our guests, this is Wooden's Apple House. It's on Walnut Ridge, just off Highway 30. So if you haven't been this fall, you should definitely bring your families and come back. Plan to be in line a while to have lunch, apples. It's a family-owned business. Now what they're bringing out right now as we bring up Miss Emily is the apple dumplings and ice cream. So y'all help yourself and as Miss Emily starts to speak. And I hope you enjoyed that. And one thing I failed to mention, and we want to congratulate all the way. Ms. Zonda, most of you know, she has recently been named the general manager of the new lodge at Fall Creek Falls. So we're really proud. things that I think is going to be a pressing issue is, are you going to crab legs on Friday night?
Yeah, but
Okay. So,
no, not even a buffet.
not even, okay. Well, but we're looking forward to that opening. And I've been, so most of us at the telephone co-op have been in the building, and it's very impressive. And it's going to be extremely nice. So if you want to, I want to introduce our speakers, Miss Emily Yu. And I think all the other telecommunication providers in the room will share in being extremely thankful for what the Broadband Grant Program in Tennessee is doing for rural Tennessee. And it's been extremely helpful. We've got a project right now that's funded by this program that's serving actually right here around Pikes. We're working on that project now. We have another one that we started yesterday, and that's our 881 project that goes out in the country, that leads, for those local, the intersection at Three-Way Market, and goes all the way to into Cumberland County. So that's another program funded by this program. So we're looking very forward. This program also, through the ARC branch of it, helped us serve all of Fall Creek Falls. And I know probably the folks from New Lomond, Sequatchie Valley, and Twin Lakes, you all have shared similar stories in your service areas. So Miss Emily's native of Chattanooga, went to GPS, and graduated with a degree in political science from Vanderbilt. And she's now, as I mentioned, the Broadband Grants Manager in Tennessee. And I'd like to welcome Miss Emily to speak to us today about the new programs.
Thank you, everyone. Really excited to be here. Not to put a lot of pressure on, so we're going to try to live true to that. And out to dinner, again, Matt always talks about what's his Apple House, and now I know why he always talks about it, because that was amazing. But I'm here to talk about our broadband grant program and sort of where we're going from here, especially with the American Rescue Plan funding that has recently gone out. The presentation will look pretty familiar to the providers, but there is some new information towards the end of this. I can't guarantee that you'll be happy about it, but that's why I'm saving it for the end, so you can at least be happy for a little bit. But we established this grant program back in 2017, 2018 as part of the Tennessee Broadband Accessibility Act. And one of the big parts about that was deregulation. So cooperatives were not previously allowed to provide broadband, and now they were able to. And then it also established the grant program. So we've done 4 rounds of awards so far, totaling $60 million. And we've kind of gone up incrementally in the amount of money we've received from the General Assembly. So a total of $60 million so far in state funding. And then this past year, we got some CARES Act funding as well to help with the pandemic. That was another $60 million. That was a crazy time, as I'm sure, it was just, yeah, the pandemic. But providers really stepped up in that time. I don't even remember how long the application was out there, just a few weeks. Yes, sorry, 6 days. And then Crystal and I tried our best to score it in just a few weeks. But usually that process is months long. So I have to give credit where it's due. So put those 2 funding sources together, that's $120 million so far that's gone into the grant program, and that's gone to serve 140,000 Tennesseans in 64 counties. And providers that are here today, they have all been previous grantees, great partners to work with. They really step up and wanting to serve those in the rural, hard to serve areas, and I couldn't be more appreciative of that. And then that's our sort of dashboard on our website. If you want to see specifically more about all the awards that have gone out, you can go on there, and it's a great interactive tool that you can use. Here are some pictures of these projects. Marion County right there is close, and you can see just how vast these infrastructure projects are, having to go in the valley, and I think there's some who have used a helicopter to have fiber and wire along the way. That one in Robertson County, you can see there's a dog in there, so you're really going out to the community, getting to know these people, and I would say they're really pillars in their respective footprints. So those are just a few pictures, and I also like to show how rural these areas are that we're building out to. So American Rescue Plan, that is the big ticket item at the moment. So Tennessee as a state got about almost $4 billion, that's with a B, dollars in that. And that was sort of the second or third. There were so many stimulus bills that came out of Congress, but this was one of them. And the Financial Stimulus Accountability Group, that's a group that the governor appointed. It's got some legislators and some of the constitutional officers, and they had decided to appropriate $500 million of Tennessee's ARP funds for broadband projects. We did get $100 million appropriated by the General Assembly, just with regular state funding, but that's being put on hold while we do this $500 million first. So $400 million of that is going to be very similar to our state program for infrastructure in unserved areas. Providers will be used to that application process. We're trying to keep it as similar as we can. And then we're going to use $100 million for some adoption programs. And this is something that I'm really excited about. We've been so focused on infrastructure the first few years of this program, and I see it as a continuum, trying to, once you have that access or people are adopting it, do they know how to use it? And so, and it's also to the benefit of providers if you have people using that service and getting those take rates up. So I think it's a win-win situation for everyone. So awards or funds do not have to be awarded until 2024, and then they don't have to be actually spent until 2026. But since this is pandemic related, we're trying to get it out there as quickly as possible. People need access now. I would argue they needed it years ago. So really trying to make sure that we keep that tight timeline, but it won't be as crazy as the CARES Act funding was, because I refuse to ever do that again. Now, we are awaiting that final rule from U.S. Treasury. I know I've been saying it should be coming out this month. I actually just had a call right before I came here that said that that is now delayed. They said the final rule will be out sometime this fall. What does that mean? No idea. We're thinking maybe Thanksgiving, which is not ideal. So originally we were going to have an application out mid to late October, have those due by the end of the year, and then award in the spring. With this change now, it was literally, I found out like 15 minutes before I walked in here. So we don't have a new timeline ready yet, so apologies on that. But very frustrated, as I'm sure you all are as well. So apologies on that. But I'll still go, if the program guidelines that we've started to put together will stay the same, it's just the timeline that's really going to be different on that. So, as I said, the infrastructure program, that's the first sort of tranche with the $400 million. Two parts of that. We are really wanting to keep focus on distressed and at-risk counties to keep in line with Governor Lee's executive order. And so, those projects that really want to target those distressed and at-risk counties are going to receive prioritization in that scoring process. And then the other part that will get a little more prioritization are those projects that get local ARP matches. So cities and counties are also getting their own allocation of these ARP funds. So we're changing from a 50-50 match to 70-30. So the state will put in 70% of that project, and then the provider and or the county or locality will be responsible for that 30%. And if you can show on that application, the provider would still be the main applicant, but if you can show on that application that you got a county to contribute as well, that is going to bump you up in the scoring as well. Now, since this is federal money, there are some, I don't want to call it restrictions, but some rules you'll have to follow that you won't usually have to with the state grant program. So good news is environmental reviews will not be required. I know that's a common pain point for a lot of providers. Procurement, competitive procurement is going to be required. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Davis-Bacon, a little bit of gray area on that with prevailing wages. Treasury said they encourage the use of prevailing wages, or if it's over like a $10 million project, to use them, but it's still kind of, jury's still out on that one, which is why, again, we're awaiting the final rule on all of this. So that's still to be seen. But going back to the procurement part, I think that's going to be very important, because for counties, if you're wanting to put in that match, the county themselves would have to put out an RFP for a provider that they want to work with. So the state is not going to handle it on our end in terms of reimbursing both the provider and the county. The provider, the applicant would have to work it out with the county themselves, if that makes sense. And I can take more questions on this after. But that's going to be the main thing that I think counties and providers are going to need to focus on, is getting that RFP out and working that all out. The other change is that instead of it being a 2-year project, it's now going to be a 3-year project. Since these projects will most likely be bigger, hopefully, we want you to go big. This is the most amount of funding we've gotten ever. So really wanting to close that gap as much as possible. So making it 3 years, and also we know how long the lead times have gotten on fiber. The procurement process is going to take a while. It can be hard to find contractors. We've heard all of this, so trying to take that into account as well by expanding that project window timeline. Moving on to the adoption programs. So the first would be sort of a low-cost internet program. Right now, the FCC has their emergency broadband benefit program, which is, I think, up to $50 a month to low-income and other qualifying households to help with that internet subscription. Because I think one of the main drivers of households not adopting internet is not being able to afford it. So that program is helping with that. There's a rumor that that could be made permanent in the infrastructure bill that's going through Congress right now. So if that does become the case, then this fund would just be reallocated to somewhere else. But in the event that does not happen, this would kind of take the place of that and help with adoption there. The other two, I'm going to just kind of put them together in the same bucket right now. We're going to call it our community connectivity program. So that's kind of going off of a previous program we had called Downtown Wi-Fi. ARC did a couple of those projects, and then us and ECD did some as well. And that was basically just connecting those main center hubs of cities, their downtowns, with connectivity. But I really want to expand this out to other places, just any sort of community anchor institution or gathering place in general. State parks, we talk a lot to them about wanting connectivity. So that would definitely count. Public housing authorities, I think that's going to be handled through our community development block grant program, but that's kind of what we're going along with. Our Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities reached out to us. They have some group homes where they have individuals living, and they have a great initiative called Enabling Technology. And there's a lot of great software out now that can help people with disabilities, just on your phone, but you need Wi-Fi to really be able to use that and assist. So helping connect those group homes. We're really trying to think outside the box here and be creative. So that's the aim with that program as well. One thing we're trying to think through, and I appreciate feedback on this as well, is we were initially just going to make the recipients of this community connectivity program the providers, but we're also thinking through if municipalities or counties, if they want to be the grantee and just do it maybe in the form of hotspots or any other way. Maybe it's a building that they own and they just rather go that way. Whether that would be easier if you just want to keep it to the providers and have them. It'd be both, you know, hooking up a place or having hotspots. We could go either which way. We're still trying to figure that out, and also, again, see what people think and what would be best there. And then, of course, some admin in there. Some of you may know Crystal Ivy, she was our director. She left about 2 weeks ago, so I'm a one-woman show at the moment. It's a lot of fun, but hopefully we'll be hiring our director soon. So that's the other caveat, that I am by myself right now, so some patience would be greatly appreciated as we try to figure all this out. And then, of course, once we hire a new director, that will be announced as well. I would go through the timeline. That's kind of all shot to, well, I won't say that. But it's going to be changed now. But I will point out that ARP Phase 2, that yellow line, we are going to reevaluate after these, the first phase projects are awarded, and then our map. I'll talk more about our map on the next slide. But if there are still some remaining unserved areas across the state, there's a possibility that we could go back to the governor's office and ask that financial stimulus accountability group for some additional funds to help close that gap. So that's possible in the future, depending on what we can do with this $400 million. Now, for mapping, I think we're all well aware of how inaccurate the FCC maps can be. It can be really frustrating when you go on there and you know you're not served, and it says you're served, and it's like, but that's not true, and that's how so many funding decisions are made, and it's just a mess. FCC is trying to be better about it. I see Jonathan raise his eyebrows. They're supposed to be more granular. We'll see if that actually happens. But for the meantime, we're just going to take matters into our own hands. TASER, the Advisory Committee on Intergovernmental Relations, released a recommendation that ECD create their own statewide broadband map, and so that's what we're doing. We are working with Connected Nation, which we've worked with for years now on the grant program, just helping with review and on-site validation. So they're a great partner to work with. They are putting the map together. They've done it in several other states, so they have a really great reputation. And that map is supposed to be complete by May of next year, so May 2022. So that's why I was saying once that map is complete and we see what's left across the state, that's where Phase 2 might come in. But that is the mapping part. And then this last one, meaning this was supposed to be, again, for communities, but meeting with local communities, I've heard that providers have already met a lot with their counties, and that's really encouraging to hear. These conversations are already being had, and that's extremely important. And then all those things I mentioned, local community match, and then maybe required to conduct an RFP. But that's the presentation. I feel like I've talked a lot, and that was a lot of information. So any questions, feedback? Happy to answer anything. Yes. Oh, sorry.
I have a question. We didn't know that this partnering with Broadband was recommended or even an option when we got our first ARP funds. And that money has been already designated for water lines to carry to people's houses. But we found out yesterday we're going to get another $3 million next May. Can we, with the anticipation, count part of that money toward a local match?
Yes. So as I said, it really needs to be worked out on the county and the provider's end in terms of how that reimbursement would work. But that's definitely possible as long as the provider's okay with kind of waiting on that until the county gets the fund. But that's definitely allowable, and the provider can just make a note of that in the application. We don't have to like see the money in the bank right then in terms of the match part, if that makes sense.
Okay. My other question is this where they will send it in to us up front, or do we have to pay it out ourselves and be reimbursed? The other ARP they sent up front.
Oh, okay.
Sent half of it.
I'm not too sure on how they're giving out the money to counties, but I know they're having a technical assistance webinar series that the Office of Finance Administration is putting on, and I think along with the comptroller. So they may talk about it more there. Sorry.
Thank you.
First of all, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for coming and doing this. You had mentioned the new map, the granular level map that was mentioned at GovCon.
Yep.
Is there a chance that the results of the map are going to factor into this first round of infrastructure broadband grants?
That's a great question. So we don't see the map being really ready by the time we award, although now with the new timeline, it might be, like that might work out. But for now, we're planning on not having a final map ready by that time. So we would still follow the same process we've followed with the state grant program in terms of disputing that FCC map. So we're still keeping that in place. Don't worry. We'll make sure we get as accurate that as possible.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Any thoughts on that community connectivity part? Is there even capacity? I know capacity is the big issue right now. And providers will be taking on a lot. So is that maybe an opportunity where you think it'd be best to give it to communities to take on that responsibility, or would you still like to have it with providers? Yes, okay.
I will speak as far as counties, we don't want to be in there.
All right, I got you.
What he said.
All right, okay.
Who paid him to say that?
No, I mean, it's really, all we're doing is doing, I think, a lot of the administrative work on the grant. I mean, the providers are the ones in the communities, boots on the ground, doing the construction and going out to people's houses, and couldn't do it without providers that want to put in applications and work with us. So again, so much credit has to go to them.
Emily, on the information relative to Department of Treasury final rule coming out, I mean, that delay, that's obviously going to impact a lot of plans over the next 90 days.
Yes.
Any other insight they got, other than just, hey, it's going to come out in the fall, and that doesn't mean this month? So.
Yeah, no, nothing really there. We're on a call with TDEC, who's doing a lot of the water and sewer, because they got about $1 billion in that as well. And Kendra Apwitz, she's the one kind of penning that up. And both of her and I had the same reaction when they said it on the call. They're like, final rule is delayed, like it might be this far. And our faces were just like in disbelief, our jaws dropped to the ground. We're like, you have to be kidding me. So no, since it's also just fresh right now, we don't really have any much more on that. But I think I'm speaking with Brooksy, who's our new Assistant Commissioner of Community and Rural Development after Stanley Arnold has left. And we're talking tomorrow. We're going to try to get some more things hashed
So
out.
it is going to delay the water and wastewater program as well? And
So I think their timeline, TDEC wasn't thinking they were going to have anything out until spring. So they might be fine, but our timeline is definitely going to change.
I'll ask one, as we're planning, you still anticipate the RDOF areas to be open for grants?
We're crossing our fingers on that. It's been different with the state grant program, since there's enough, I guess, degrees of separation, but with ARP being federal funds and then RDOF being federal funds, I think they're kind of in a catch-22. They can't really say ignore this other federal program. But I think what we are hoping for is that they will give states flexibility in determining those eligible unserved areas, and then we would follow what we do on the state grant program, still keep those areas eligible. The fact that it has been RDOF awarded would count against it a little bit, but also we're trying to accelerate that build, so that's going to be how we go about it if we get that leeway. Any other questions?
Well, again, So if y'all get a chance, definitely give her some thanks on the way out. Are there any other announcements? I'll ask one question. Any idea when the lodge will be open?
It's probably going to be January, and probably just a soft opening.
Okay.
And soft crowd drinks.
Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll adjourn. There's plenty of, still some plates of food and some, several of the apple dumplings back there if you need another one. So, again, thank you all for coming, and special thanks to our guests for traveling over to be with us this evening. Thank you.